The short answer is, because the universities were so angry with Galileo. The real battle was not between Christianity and science, it was between old science and new science. No physicists or natural philosophers, as they were then known, were going to take this new astronomical theory seriously, because it clashed with all known ideas about physics. At the time, Aristotelian physics was accepted in the universities, and Aristotle had stated that the Earth must be stationary and at the center of the universe. It is hard for us now to realize just how immense a challenge Copernican theory was. If it were true, the entire body of received knowledge about physics, laws of motion, theories of matter, the most fundamental ideas about what the universe is made of, and why it behaves the way it does, would have to change. It did not seem a likely option. It was not just Galileo's philosophical ideas that annoyed his opponents. Galileo was just not playing the academic game by the rules. Galileo was a mathematical astronomer, and in the university pecking order of the time, mathematicians were at the bottom. They certainly were not allowed to challenge the natural philosophers, who were at the top. At the time, physics was not based on mathematics as it is now, and natural philosophers did not think a mathematician could tell them anything. Consider what a fellow academic had to say of him. Before we consider Galileo's demonstrations, it seems necessary to prove how far from the truth are those who wish to prove natural facts by means of mathematical reasoning, among whom, if I am not mistaken, is Galileo. Anyone who thinks he can prove natural properties with mathematical arguments is simply demented, for the two sciences are very different. Vincenzo di Grazia, a professor in philosophy at Pisa. Normally, this kind of academic battle would be dealt with internally, in the academic environment, through debate, publication, and so on. Galileo, however, refused to play on the establishment's terms. He was not going to let a stagnant academic network stifle him. He moved out of the university system altogether, and discovered another setting in which he could work. Resigning from his university position, he managed to persuade the Medici Grand Duke Cosimo II to employ him as court philosopher. Galileo was now in a position to be highly offensive to university philosophers. He had deliberately rejected the university system and its status rankings. He had taken the title philosopher, even though he was only an astronomer. He bypassed the academic subtleties and niceties, and in his professional publications he was frequently highly sarcastic and insulting to his university opponents. Galileo's enemies, unable to defeat him in logical argument or by academic pressure, took the battleground to the church. Galileo had not allowed his opponents to silence him in the normal ways, so they looked to silence him through creating theological trouble. These men openly accused Galileo of contradicting the Bible, and set about creating popular suspicion against Galileo, in order to catch the attention of the church authorities. It was an unfair move. Theologians had traditionally allowed philosophers space, in which to develop ideas. The medieval church was not Orwell's Big Brother. Philosophical speculation and discussion was the province, and lifeblood, of the universities, and though the church secured the boundaries of admissible doctrine, it did not normally dictate what could be discussed. The church was not out to silence Galileo. Indeed, Galileo's telescopic discoveries had been accepted and endorsed by Jesuit astronomers, when he traveled to Rome in 1611. He was not without church support. In other words, the church was not at warfare with science. On the contrary, Jesuit brothers were some of the leading scientific teachers and researchers of the time. What the church did not like was a challenge to its authority. That was how Galileo's opponents, led by the Aristotelian academic Ludovico del Colombi, who had suffered under Galileo's sarcastic criticisms, presented the case. Galileo was openly accused of believing theories that contradicted the Bible. That is what caught the attention of the church authorities. In particular, one Cardinal Bellarmine took notice. He had for most of his adult life been the principal spokesman for Catholicism against the Protestants. Remember, the Reformation had begun only 100 years before. He was not at all pleased to hear of a Catholic who was potentially challenging the Church's official interpretation of the Bible. Even though Galileo had some reasonable arguments in his defense, Bellarmine was not about to let trouble be stirred up over the relatively unimportant matter of a technical astronomical theory. What is more, Galileo did not help his case at all by continuing in his usual brash, sarcastic manner. In other words, though Galileo's argument actually based on Augustine, that the Bible can at times be interpreted figuratively was quite reasonable, Bellarmine would not have appreciated Galileo's quips about narrow-minded theologians. It was not the time for such a tone. The matter had become official, and was dealt with quickly. Galileo came to Rome, and the matter of Copernican theory was considered by a panel of theologians for a brief 3 days. This is hardly long enough to consider a question of such importance, we would think, but the question is of far more importance to us than it would have been to the Church at the time. All that the theologians saw, it seems, was yet another challenge to Church authority by an isolated troublemaker. It would be nipped in the bud. Copernicus' book was condemned, and Galileo was told not to hold or defend the theory. Galileo himself was not officially mentioned in any condemnation, nor was he disciplined, probably due to his powerful court connections. There is more to tell about the Galileo story. Before Galileo finally found himself in front of the Inquisition in 1632. There's the way he infuriated the powerful Jesuit astronomers with his insulting rebuttals of their research, how he personally offended the Pope in his overconfidence, how he was used as a pawn in a political struggle between factions in Rome, who had no concern with astronomy at all. There is also another story to tell in the Protestant reaction to Galileo, which was significantly different from the Catholic one. Yet the intellectual background to Galileo's story is found in the clash between Aristotelian physics and the new science. It is unfortunate that the Church let itself be drawn into defending an Aristotelian universe, which was never necessary to the Bible, unfortunate for Galileo, and for the Catholic Church's reputation ever since. The important thing, that has been revealed by historical research, however, is that Galileo's trial was not an instance of a battle between Christianity and science. It was a battle between old, Aristotelian science and new, mathematical science, a battle in which the Church became entangled. Many people wrongly believe Galileo proved heliocentricity. His problem arose when he stopped proposing it as a scientific theory, and began proclaiming it as truth, though there was no conclusive proof of it at the time. As the historian William Shea puts it, Galileo's condemnation was the result of the complex interplay of untoward political circumstances, political ambitions, and wounded prides.